This video has been by far the most difficult to write, as I find myself on the edge of my capacity to build upon this idea of the sublime. I want to be able to articulate what Donna Tartt, in her seminal work The Secret History, describes as the morbid longing for the picturesque at all costs. Perhaps it is a fatal flaw or a uniquely human strength, this ability to sail at the very borders, the very edges of our knowledge, a burden so heavy yet so worthwhile. Some would argue that we have uncovered all that we could have, like the postmodernists, whose identity was built solely around this ability to deconstruct everybody else's ideas. But if you think about it, postmodernism is so yesterday for the world today. Evolutionary psychology managed to pull the rug out of the rug pullers by showing that evolutionary principles can give a far more compelling explanation about the human condition than the standard postmodern claim that everything is culturally relative or socially constructed. But for me, even the subject of Darwinian evolution seems a little bit sketchy. I'm slowly starting to question this idea of the survival of the fittest. It is very difficult to wrap my head around the fact that evolution is a result of random genetic mutations. The most favorable gene, of course, is carried forward by natural selection. Think about it a little bit. How can this extraordinary vitality and diversity come from a universe that is heading towards total annihilation? When I was in my engineering college, I learned that the second law of thermodynamics states that in the real world, disorder always increases. Yet, if you sharpen your awareness a little bit, you will see that universe actually creates order everywhere. It is only increasing in potentiality. Recently, I've been fascinated by the emerging fields of chaos and complexity theory, and it states that the universe has an inherent tendency to actually create order. Just as when the water chaotically washing down your bathroom sink beautifully organizes itself into a swirling whirlpool. I'm starting to think that knowledge expands faster than there are even ways to even categorize it. In his book, The Black Swan, Nassim Taleb talks about how history is entirely shaped by black swan events. Just as how it is a rare occurrence to witness a black swan, events that are beyond the realm of human expectations occur all of the time. Nothing in the past could point to its possibility. It is only in the act of retrospection, when we actively look back and account for all the things that could have contributed to that event, can we put two and two together and weave explanations about how what occurred was an inevitable outcome. This black swan effect is a result of individual and collective distortion, mostly arising due to our overconfidence in our knowledge. It is not an objective phenomenon. The black swan logic makes what you do not know far more valuable than what you do know. Now, this is where the concept of anti-library comes into the picture. Now, for as long as I can remember, my life's been mostly filled with books. Crime novels, fantasy epics, philosophy texts, historical narratives, and subjects with only a passing interest. But recently, I've fallen into the trap of sundoku. It's a Japanese word used to describe the habit of collecting books that will never be read. For quite some time, I thought I was a hoarder, perhaps the foreshadowing of a pseudo-intellectual, until I discovered about the concept of anti-libraries by Nassim Taleb. A large collection of books does not necessarily have to represent how much someone knows, but it can be rather the pursuit of knowing more. Read books, if you think about it, are far less valuable than unread books. But there's a caveat here, and that is intentionality. Intentionality is very important when it comes to building an anti-library. It is not just about collecting any and all kinds of books. It is about selecting the pieces that feel very important to your core, the kind of books that resonate with you at a deeper level. Maybe these are the books that spark a certain kind of interest in you but are very difficult to engage with in the present moment. But in the future, a time will come when you will mingle with the book all by itself. If you can imagine with me for a moment about all that you know as a tiny island, and the extreme borders, the shores, represent the limits of your knowledge, and the sea beyond represent the sublime, or everything you do not know about the universe or the human condition. Now, this voluntary act of building an anti-library is kind of like building a lighthouse that would help you see the vast expanse of the unexplored sea, and yet sending out voyages and expeditions to uncover insights and ideas from across the sea. Every stack is like a brick that you lay in the foundation of this lighthouse. Every challenge that I have ever overcome and every transformation that I was able to create in myself, I would gladly attribute to the books that I have read. And it is safe to assume that building an anti-library of this sort, or some would use the word inner work library, is an investment rather than an expense. But this library should only contain the books that you have an active relationship with. This can be understood as a living and engaging relationship rather than a one-time fling. Of course, you will accumulate more knowledge and more books as you grow older, and the growing number of unread books will look at you menacingly. Indeed, the more you know, the larger the rows of unread books. According to Robert Greene, in the face of the sublime, we feel a shiver, a foretaste of death itself, something too large for our minds to encompass. And for a moment, it shakes us out of our smugness and releases us from the death-like grip of habit and banality.